In today's video, I am going to be breaking down different basketball plays and strategies on how you can overload a zone defense in basketball. The reason why you would want to overload a zone defense is because now in a zone, you're guarding an individual space and not an actual man. So if you overload a side, that means that there is going to be at least one player open in theory at all times. So let's get down and let's check this out. Really quickly, if you do want a crazy, unbeatable basketball zone defense that will leave nobody open, make sure to go check out the Unbeatable Basketball Zone Defense book that is down in the description below. First, we're going to be looking at a 2-3 zone defense. In a 2-3 zone defense, you're going to see players guarding, generally speaking, these zones right here. As you can see, players 1 as well as players 3 will not be guarding this side of the court, which means that there will be always a player open if you overload one of the sides. So a very easy way to overload a side is by getting some players into the post, and if we were just to stop right there, what we would have is a defense that would be zoned up, very similar to this, where a 2-3 zone, obviously player 3 is going to be shadowing the top player on his side, the 45. We're not going to have both of these guys trapping up top. We're going to have player 2 playing the gap here as well as watching that high post. Player 5 will be watching the high post and player 4 would be watching the low post. You can see that they're still in a 2-3 zone, it's just angled a different way. So as of right here, we have not overloaded the side, but by passing that ball over to player 2 and having player 1 cut over to this side, we now have the ability to now have a player open. Generally speaking, the high post, if he can post up his man right here, that will always be open to pass to, which means that in a zone, player 5 has to take the high post, player 4 needs to take the low post. Now, the kick out pass to player 1 is wide open, or a high to low post pass could be open as well. If they don't zone up right away by this player cutting out towards this corner, we may have ourselves an open 3-point shot. Now, if we were to then swing this ball over to the opposite side, most likely your zone offense will look like this, where now player 1 goes out to this side, player 3 dribbles out towards the right side, and now we may have an open 3-point shot in the corner once again. If we pass from player 1 to player 4, now player 5 can cut across the key. This could be a floater or layup up the middle. Now that's just a very basic way of overloading a zone so that you can easily score. There's not much off-ball movement, not a ton anyways. It's just about trying to pass the ball as fast as possible, create gaps in the zone so that you can attack those gaps, because every time you pass the ball, the defense has to shift. And when the defense shifts, that's when holes open up, because one player may shift earlier than another. That opens up a hole and you can then take it. Or you may be able to pass the ball just so fast that the defense just can't shift in time and you get yourself an open layup. Now, how I like to overload a zone defense is different than most coaches because I personally like to run multiple guards. How I like to gap out or overload a zone is by having only one post player and essentially running a 4-corner style offense. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this overloading a zone. What I would call this is gapping out a zone. So the idea here is to look for baseline cutters. So what I mean by that is we're going to try and feed that high post player as early as we can in our offense. The defense is going to be shifted like this. If we can't get that pass into player 5, player 1 is going to attack the gap between 1 and 2 and kick the ball out to player 2. That is going to shift player 2 red. We're going to then move player 5 out to this side. And if we can get that pass into player 5 now, because player 1 hasn't shifted over to guard that high post, now we may have a lane to the basket. If not, and player 5 is now guarding that high post, and maybe these guys are still kind of covering a bit too high on the baseline, then we may have the weak side baseline player cut. He's going to cut all the way from the corner, all the way to the opposite low post. So the idea here is now we get the high to low post pass and an easy layup. If that's not there, let's say player 5 did an awesome job on trying to cover both spots and player 1 came down. Well, now player 3 is going to go out if player 4's defender is way out here. And now what we'll have is player 4 cut backdoor. We can now kick that pass back out here, or it could go down to player 4. Player 3 clears out, player 4 continues through. Player 1 can attack because I always like to try and get as many paint touches as possible. This is going to collapse these players here. Now, you're going to get a kick out pass to player 4 for an open 3-point shot. If that's not there, these guys recover. Well, now, player 1 pops out, gets that ball back, and we again try to feed that high post once again. Now, this is kind of a more advanced way when you've got a 4 out 1 in, but if you're running a team that's a bit shorter, or if you have a team that's full of guards that has very good shooters, just as a very good example, that's the style of team that I like. A team that is maybe a bit shorter, faster, has a lot of shooting options, and then one big guy in the middle. That's a very deadly combination if you've got to play like this versus a zone defense, because now you're spacing out that zone. You're making them work even harder because now they've got more ground to cover. Sometimes when teams run a zone, they're not just doing it for strategy's sake. They're doing it because their team is sometimes slower and can't keep up against a faster team, which now we're making them pay, especially if we are the ones with the faster team. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. Make sure to go check out the Unbeatable Basketball Zone Defense that is down in the description below, and I will see you guys again in my next video.